The Brotherhood's siege is in vain. I am Dracul, Prince of Darkness.
Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2, Prince of Darkness difficulty walkthrough. We have just killed Agaras and we're now making our way to the section with the Toymaker. And we're going to be grabbing the Toymaker's heart and the second piece of the Mirror of Fate. So I love this next section, but I've got to admit, it is the most indulgent, like nonsensical, doesn't do anything to forward the plot, or like it just comes out of nowhere. It's just so random, but amazing, and a nice touching somber piece of exposition. And in a game that barely has any touching somber exposition, I really liked it. And it's not, you know, a massively elaborate story. It's a simple premise. You know, an old Toymaker ends up getting tricked by an evil baron, and, you know, everything kind of goes downhill from there. But it's done in such a novelty and interesting way, and the voice acting is really good. That was amazing, by the way. I don't know if you saw that, but when you use these lifts, there's a little mini-game where you get to throw knives, and I pulled the switch just then, and I looked the complete wrong way, so none of the curtains went up, and I immediately failed. Which is kind of cool, but all you have to do is hit 4 of them. If you hit them in the sequence, you'll get awesome at the end, and it gives you some free experience. I suppose you could probably farm experience here, but it's not too quick, so I don't recommend it. In fact, I don't recommend farming experience at all, because you might notice on the top upper left, I have dozens of the stuff because I never use it. You do need quite a lot, though, to upgrade everything. Mainly because there's a ton of moves that cost 10,000, you know, for the Void Sword and for the gloves. And they're all moves that pretty much do the same thing. They're very area effect heavy, that don't really require any skill or anything. Like, a lot of the moves on this game have no technical worthwhile at all. There's no timing to them, there's no real skill to them. I don't know, I wish there was more to it, I really do. And I think it's because I've lost my wings. I love the wing stun, it was so cool. I liked the charges as well, which if you never played the old game, you could hold. I think it was one of the triggers, and he did this like powerful charge move, and you can charge on this game. It's what the evade does when you hit people, but it's just nowhere near as impressive or as powerful or, you know, as interesting. Just a lot of stuff missing, and I don't get why. Well, I do get why. It's because they've simplified it so now that you can be an absolute badass without requiring you to press that many buttons. But this is the monk. I don't know if we fought one yet. I think we have. Yeah, we have. And he's got some friends with him, so a couple of things to note about this guy. He's an utter bitch. He'll teleport away from you almost every time, but if you land a hit, you can launch him, and if you launch him, he's dead because he's very weak. He can buff the enemies with either a gold buff or a silver buff. The silver buff, which he's doing now, will buff pretty much everybody in the room, and it gives them, I assume, increased damage and some decent defense, something like that. The gold buff makes them armored for some reason, and it makes you bounce off, and from that point on they just spam unblockable attacks. But the gold buff only seems to work on one enemy. A lot of this is just observational, guys, so it's just, you know, empirical. It might not necessarily be fact. And a lot of this is being guised off of the challenges, because I just did a challenge that involved having the big armoured guy you saw earlier kill a ton of those guys, I think it was, and then I had to kill him without breaking his armour. They're just so dumb. They're not quite as dumb as the quick time event you have to do here to make this bridge wind, but that's just silly. But literally, some of those challenges to get those requirements, because you're at the whimsy of the AI, they can take 20 to 30 minutes for the AI to do something. Like one of them took me 20 minutes, and I found a pretty decent strategy of accelerating it, but it was still just a massive waste of time. And the logic here is, if I destroy his shield, I can get down there and fight, but they've got that stupid projectile that knocks you over, and I just decide to drop down and beat them up. So standard Holy Brotherhood Knights, they've got shields, which makes them a little bit more annoying. But you can always backflip over them and hit them from behind and launch them, or you can break their armor like I'm doing. You might be wondering why I'm wasting chaos magic when there's a boss so close to this. Well, in the next room where the boss is, there's a fountain that's going to give you as much magic as you need. And I've got the boss down pretty well. The only section I'm not too great on is the Toymaker phase himself, because he has a couple of really big elaborate moves which on my first playthrough completely missed me through no skill of myself. I was just attacking him and they missed, and on this playthrough he hit me with them, and it introduced me to the checkpoints, which are much better than they thought they would be, because I thought it would be a boss gauntlet of 4 bosses in a row with no checkpoint, but instead it's 2 bosses checkpoint and then 2 bosses. So, you know, if you struggle with one of the phases, unfortunately you're going to have to fight another phase if it's the end one. Another thing as well that was a bit of an oversight on my part, in the theatre here there's these chairs, and on my first playthrough, because I was smashing everything and taking my time and exploring, pretty much the opposite of what I'm doing on this guide, I smashed all the furniture in this room, so when the boss fight started I didn't get stuck on anything. That is not the case in this guide, so I recommend smashing all the furniture. The boss will smash them himself, but you'll still get caught, and the amount of times I got hit cheekily because I got stuck, it really wound me up. But the bosses themselves are not too bad, so we should be okay. But before we're going to do those, we have to find the heart, and we have to do a little play, which I really liked. I thought this bit were, once again, very self-indulgent and silly, unneeded. A little bit like the Magic Man from Condemned 2, but I really liked him as well. You know, it's a level that serves the level rather than the game, and it's just completely self-serving. And I actually didn't think it was going to be all that cool, because they put a big push on it in the marketing. Like, a lot of IGN was covering the Toymaker stuff, and when I heard the name Toymaker, it just made me think of a boss with tons of lackeys running around, and I really didn't like the notion of that. But it turns out he's one of the cooler boss fights. He's really well designed, and it's fun to do, which... those two right there are my pinnacle of boss fights. Give me a cool looking life bar, that's my third one. You know, fun and well designed. That's pretty much all I ask for in games, you know, not too much. But once again, we are a rat. You might be wondering what the 9 means in the top left. It means you've got 9 lives, which I didn't really think the rats were synonymous with 9, but I literally think it means that there's 9 rats in my little chain of lemming rats. And for the most, you don't need more than 1 rat, but occasionally you come up against a piece of the environment which is a little bit bullshitty, like the wires that are electrical, that just kill you for no reason when they don't even touch you. But the reason we did this was to light this furnace, and this furnace powers the theatre. Now that we've got power back, we can pull the crank, and we can get on with the production of telling us the story of the Toymaker. And this Friday, South Park The Stick of Truth is coming out. It's out today in America. I checked last night when it was technically Tuesday and none of the reviews were up, which really worries me, because a review embargo often means one thing. If they don't want you to see the review until after the game is out, then the review is almost always more negative than the developer wanted. And I like to think that Obsidian have made one of the greatest RPGs ever, based on one of the greatest series ever. So I have really high hopes for the game, because I am a massive South Park fan. I am a person who started watching South Park back when it started and never stopped. You know, it was cool for about a year for everybody, you know, who killed Kenny, you bastards, and all that kind of stuff. And then they just stopped watching it and nobody cared anymore. It was like a fad, but I never stopped, and I've seen every single episode of South Park up to this point, and I'm still following it because I'm a massive fan of Matt Stone and Trey Parker. So I am really anxious to see how good this game is, because they've had a ton of input on it. They've worked exclusively with it. They've essentially made a game, and everything they touch is gold, in my opinion. You know, the Book of Mormon has done amazing. You know, the movies that they've made were amazing. The series is amazing. The two of the bravest, like, satirists going. You know, they're completely fearless in a world that is way too politically correct, and I love that. So I've got massive hopes for it, and I'm going to be covering whatever the hardest difficulty is, and however I can make the guide as interesting to watch as physically possible. And I'm so excited. But here we go, folks. This is the little stage presentation when this crazy looking contraption turns up. This guy's going to narrate a story to you. And now it kind of sucks that you don't get to fight this person. I really wanted to fight him. He looked cool. And the narration's going to tell you of what tools you're going to need to pick. So just follow the video and boom, you'll get this stuff done. So the very first one is the workshop and the Toymaker. And then you have to press a button to continue the story. And it's holding these really charming puppets and like plywood prop backgrounds, which I think is a really cool aesthetic. Even if he does kind of look like a rip-off of Eggman from Sonic, who will always be Dr. Robotnik in my eyes. But the next phase involves this guy, who I hear is a bad guy in one of the earlier Castlevanias. Another cool looking puppet that would have been really cool to fight, but you don't. Something else I really like, sorry, I just kind of lost my words then, is the music. The music on this sequence it really captures the mood. It really captures just the melancholy of the whole event. So there you go, there's the handshake, there's him cursing his fate, and it's going to be our turn to change the backdrop, because I believe the next one is changing the backdrop to the castle. So move across to the castle, and then continue with the show. And in the bottom right, to show that you're doing it right, it increases the amount of experience you get. If you ask him to repeat the clue, you will lose experience points. There is no achievement for doing it perfectly, there's no real incentive to do it perfectly except for experience and, I don't know, brevity maybe. But here comes the cage. And I believe the next one is going to be the dragon, which, once again, another puppet you don't get to fight, unfortunately. But I watched somebody play this section in a Let's Play, and they criticised the entire thing. You know, they didn't see the point, they pretty much declared that the series had gone downhill and that it was like not needed in the game. And I can understand that if you've come here expecting just action and platforming and nothing else. But Castlevania's always told a story, and even though this one really doesn't affect the main narrative that much, it's still a decent story, and it's a nice change of pace. But I can definitely understand people not enjoying it, and I don't know, I just think I like the Toymaker a whole bunch. But one of the things I didn't really get in the game, maybe because I didn't read the lore and all the other stuff you could read, like the notes from the soldiers, was the blood. So the majority of the characters in this game, the Gorgons, the Toymaker, you know, everybody pretty much, is not actually against you. They're not actually bad. They call you the Prince of Darkness, they call you their lord. But the blood turns up, which must have something to do with Satan, or the inner Dracula, I'm not too sure, and the blood is the thing that corrupts them. It's the same thing that corrupted the soldiers at the beginning of the game, and it turns them against you. And I still haven't fully figured out what's doing it, aside from the assumption of, you know, the main antagonist. But that's the end of the Toymaker Heart section, and on the next one we will be fighting him in a boss fight. So thank you for watching, and you take care now.